Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to episode 3 now of the Rent Free Hockey Podcast. Today we've got a bit of a Valentine's Day special for you where we're going to be doing some matchmaking and match breaking, and so we're really looking forward to talking about each of the 7 teams in the Canadian Division, or North Division as they call it, which I'm not a fan of. Canadian Division, I think, is a lot punchier.
Yeah, don't even care who it's sponsored by.
I know, right?
It's the Canadian Division.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah, so we're going to quickly start off with a bit of a callback to our very first episode where we made some predictions about some of the make-or-break players for each team. We just want to have a couple things we want to touch on there. We're not going to talk about all the teams, so if yours doesn't come up, stick around or check the timestamps below. We've got lots to say about them a little later. So first off, we want to talk about the Maple Leafs, who are just having a time in the Canadian Division so far. Really kind of imposing their will and looking really strong.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to...
Well, definitely one of the things that we were talking about, right, was just the fact that this team was probably going to be the best team in the Canadian Division for the regular season. I think I was pretty explicit about saying specifically for the regular season, and that's panning out. But what's interesting is it's not entirely because of the reasons that I suspect. Now, okay, a guy like Matthews has gone off lately. He had 8-goal streak, right? 8-game goal streak.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's gone off, but really, like, this team isn't trying to necessarily outgun all the other teams, but I noticed there's a lot more of, risky playmaking and just playing shifts just to try again a different shift, right? Instead of trying to force goals. So it's something that Ferraro's also said where, he notices that's a bit of a trend for the Leafs. And what's interesting about that is that I don't think the Leafs are playing on all cylinders. I'm not saying that they're having great puck luck, but I don't think that this team is quite clicking as well as I thought it could, and that could be because of different injuries and different things like that. But I don't think this team has yet to see its full potential offensively or defensively, and yet they're getting wins. So I think that's impressive. And we'll see as there's more adversity and whatever form that comes in for this season. It'll be really interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, something that is different to me about this edition of the Leafs is something I don't think I have ever seen before, which is that it actually seems fun to be a Maple Leaf right now. I can't think of, maybe there have been some hot stretches in the past where that was the case, but it seems like the guys on the team are having fun playing hockey, which if you think of like Marner's last couple of years, even Matthews, obviously he's played really well, but there have been injuries. It's been bumpy for the team. The whole saga with Babcock, there's been tough times, and it just seems like the team is having fun.
Yeah.
And that's huge for team culture. Another thing is I've been really impressed by some of their additions, especially Wayne Simmons. He's been looking really good, and that's really been huge for them, I think. With all that said, if this team was playing an 82-game season this year, just in terms of point percentage, they'd probably finish with at the rate they're going now, 135-ish points, which would be historic.
Yeah.
And that's not going to continue.
No.
The league is just too competitive. There's just too many things that can go wrong. Hockey is influenced by chance too much for this pace to continue. Even though a guy like Matthews has been killing it, his shooting percentage at the time of recording this video is just a little bit over 20%. And it looks like he averages 14 or 15. So if you knock off a quarter or a third of his goals, what's that do to their season so far?
Yes, fair.
Hard to say, right? In my opinion, this team does look great, but they've looked great in the past too. And it hasn't been their the highest of their highs that have defined this team over the past few years. It's been their lowest lows.
Right.
And so the thing that I am waiting to see is what happens to this team when they face some real adversity. And losing to Ottawa in the season opener is a bummer, but to me that doesn't count.
Right. No.
That's not enough adversity yet. So was that their season opener or game 2? That might have been
Season opener.
Oh, it was? Okay.
It was for the Sens.
Was for the Sens.
Yeah, they only played on a Friday, so
they might have opened against the Habs, but it was game 1 or 2. But either way, that's just something I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when they do hit some adversity. How are they going to respond? So.
Yeah, and we weren't maybe going to bring it up this soon, but I'll say it about the Canadiens. This is the Canadiens trope. It's a classic team that always gets off to good starts, especially under Claude Julien, and then it kind of starts to dive down, and maybe we're seeing that inevitability and history start to trend towards that direction again. And so, right, like I'm just bringing that in for talking about sustainability. Mm-hmm. And what you're actually saying about Wayne Simmons, I think, in my mind, also applies to someone like Josh Anderson in the sense that because of so much time between seasons starting and the puck dropping, is that all these guys who were just beleaguered with different kinds of injuries and that they were just nagging in certain different ways, then we've really seen what that extra time has done for players to come back. And like Josh Anderson is playing lights out hockey right now. Wayne Simmons was doing great. He's broke his wrist, unfortunately. So maybe the whole injury theory is not looking flawless, right? In what I'm pointing out. But those are some trends that I'm seeing as well, where some players have really benefited from an extended amount of time off, which we thought is maybe counterintuitive because maybe time off for some players might make them more rusty, but some have come out really strong with extra rest. So.
Yeah, and just a quick note on Josh Anderson, if you're interested in hearing a bit more about his injury and his recovery and kind of the outlook for him moving forwards, go check out our second most recent video where I do a bit of a deep dive into that and what I think it's gonna Habs fans can expect from him moving forwards. But
so I guess like we're talking about the sink and swim, right? So or we're at least reflecting on the sink and swim series that we did to start the year and kind of observing what are some things we got right, what are some things we got wrong. And I think one of the things as we bounce and look around is that if I'm looking in somewhere like Calgary, I'd picked Andrew Mangiapane as my sink or swim candidate. Now, I'm not saying he's the be-all, end-all. He's not the make-or-break factor of this team, but he really epitomized, or I should say personified, their secondary scoring. And just lately, as we begin to record here, he's had a little bit of an uptick. He's got a couple goals now, but really the Flames are really dire and desperate for secondary scoring. I think their top guys are playing great right now. Markstrom is looking really confident in net, and the addition of Tanev, there's clearly some synergy that they're bringing over from Vancouver together. And there's something where, and this isn't a knock on TJ Brody, but this is speaking more to what the Flames needed, is that Tanev is certainly a guy where he is reliable, dependable, predictable, and he's just cool. He's able to make plays that either mitigate offensive chances from the other team, or he's able to have good puck clearance or defense and stuff like that. And so, there seems to be a need for more and more secondary scoring in Calgary because I don't think they're up as high in the standings as maybe some of us were thinking or hoping. So, where else do you want to go?
Well, a quick note would be the Senators. I think I was a little higher on them than I maybe should have been coming into the season, and seeing them beat the Leafs right away had me feeling real good about that prediction, but it's been a tough go. Just really things I think went off the rails in a way that they're not going to be able to recover from. That was one thing. Also, I was a little lower on the Jets than I should have been. I saw them having a lot more problems than they have. I've been really impressed by just their not just their defensemen, but their team defense.
And a lot of resiliency, you see, right? Like
time.
What we're seeing in other teams when you're hearkening back to Ottawa there is that, man, especially, so Ottawa's had some issues. There's been a 9-game road trip that they had, and that's where they suffered right at the end. Some brutal losses to Vancouver. People are starting to think maybe Vancouver's got some life. We'll touch on that later.
Yeah.
At that point, people are thinking Vancouver's maybe got some life. That'll help kickstart how they're doing. But yeah, they just got pummeled after a long road trip, and especially stacking loss upon loss. It would be really hard to just get back into that mindset of feeling like you have a chance, feeling like you can win. And sure enough, they got a bounce their way when they came back home. They're playing the Habs, and they were able to put one away. And really what we've seen since then is they've really trended up in play. They've outshot both the Oilers and the Jets and really outworked those teams. But it's got to be tough to be in that room, to be like, we outplayed that team, we outchanced that team, but we just didn't have the talent to put pucks away and in the net. That's got to be really a tough mentality, and there might be some puck luck. It could be their actual shots don't represent their high danger opportunities, which I think is likely. But yeah, it's got to be a little bit tough to be in that room. That being said, man, I am loving everything about Tim Stutzla. This guy is already like an absolute, he's playing like a man out there. You know, we say that like some people need to grow into the league, but some of his decision making and his passing, hand-eye coordination, everything. If you've been watching the Senators, you're seeing all those things. And I think the last thing just to pump the brakes on is a lot of Sens fans are getting outraged about like, oh, now is their window of unparalleled success. Well, no one predicted the Canadian division. No one predicted them going up against teams every single night where they are punching above their weight, right? And so maybe I'm going on just a little bit long about this, but like in other scenarios, they'd be playing teams like Detroit. Even they'd have 2 games a year against Chicago, right, in a regular season. Chicago's not looking as horrible maybe as we thought right now. Still early in the season. But yeah, it's just there's not really any easier games, or there's not too much variation in the quality of competition. So I think, yeah, as Sens fans, just like pump it a little bit. We're projected to be kind of last, and that all these teams consider themselves playoff teams that they're playing against. So yeah, I think it's okay. We don't need to worry about the unparalleled success, like timeline deviating as far. Maybe it gets bumped a couple years, but I think we can cool on that. So we've kind of bumped coast to coast to coast to coast.
Let's continue east and go to Toronto.
Yeah.
So in terms of matchmaking for them, it's a bit weird because, as we mentioned in our introduction, things are going well for them right now. And I personally believe that their strengths, in terms of like how their roster is constructed, the players who are their strengths, like your big four up front, they've been performing so well that it's hard to tell what the weakness, like where are the gaps, right? One that seems like a bit of a gap to me is Supi Mikheyev is on the second line right wing.
Yeah.
And I think I could be wrong, but I think he has 1 goal, 3 assists on the season so far.
Yeah. Like super fast, huge, but the finish hasn't been there for the role he's been asked, right,
and
to
like
play.
Simmons is out right now, so that doesn't help with that. But I just wonder if the second line right wing, if you can add a guy who's not just like, better suited in a third role line, but like, he can play with good players and fit well on the second line. But like a true top 6 guy, if you add someone like that, this ridiculous offense, I think, can hit another level. Just it helps so much when the defense doesn't have to like not really worry about someone on a line. You know, when all 5 guys on the ice are dangerous, you're just that much harder to defend. So before we talked about Connor Garland when we were talking about someone who the Flames could look at. If I had to matchmake, like, again, I'm not saying this guy's available, but Garland to me is almost like...
Look him up.
Like a really, really rich man's Zach Hyman.
And then some, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just like he can do all the utility stuff, but he can also lead your team in scoring if you're a not very good hockey team. Like
he generates chances from the wing, which is something they've got a luxury in Marner. But like we were just talking about Raquel previously, he's not a guy who can typically generate the high quality chances without more insulation or support, right? Whereas Connor Garland on an anemic Arizona team is doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And he's big. He's not soft. There's just so many. I think he kind of fits the identity that the Leafs are sort of trying to form. And like, again, not saying that he would be available, but if he were, I think that the Coyotes would be... When are they not rebuilding? So I think that they would be looking at...
They have no first...
They'd be looking at picks, they'd be looking at assets, and the Leafs are in a position where you can buy and not have a low chance of, I think, buyer's remorse. Also, he's an RFA. Garland is at the end of the year, so you're not losing him. That's really it'd be very hard to sign him, but that's a better problem to have than just having someone walk for nothing. So you could even flip him again if you need down the road. But the Leafs have a lot of young guys. Like, this will be hard to hear, but what's it look like if Robertson goes the other way? Hard to stomach right now, but if you're the Leafs, and things continue at this level, why not just go all in this year? You know, maybe that's something that, and like Robertson is the kind of guy who would tempt someone like Arizona, who might not be thinking, let's move this guy. A prospect of Marner's Robertson's caliber might tempt them to think more about that kind of thing. So, talking a little bit about their strengths. In our intro, I sort of shared a bit of why I feel like, while I believe this is a good team, I think they're going to win the Canadian division. It just mathematically cannot continue at this pace because of... a whole host of reasons. If you're just...
Said 135
they're on pace for in 82 games.
Just in case you're catching a clip, go back and check out the beginning of the show as well.
Yeah. I mentioned Matthews. I know I'm just anticipating a regression to the norm statistically from him, because he's shooting at his shooting percentage is 20% right now. But he's playing incredible hockey, and I know you have some things you'd like to say about that.
Another thing too is that a shortened season gives you less time to regress to a norm. So if you can ride 20% or better, for a few games, then realistically, there's only so many games left in the season, right? We are almost a third of the way in. Yeah. And he's looking great, but man, one of the things that I think makes Austin Matthews so elite, and I felt really reluctant to acknowledge this earlier, because I think some of the narrative around him for the last 2 years is that he's been a little bit softer to play against. But man, one thing that does not get enough credit, because some people might have been mocking earlier when he was getting, say, Selke votes and stuff. Some people are like, oh, come on, that's a huge homer thing. But I'm trying to look up, I had earlier, his giveaway to takeaway ratio for the league. And I might have brought this up in other podcasts, but it's so worth talking about. He's got 75 takeaways to 44 giveaways. He broke even 59-59 one year, and then last year he had 78 takeaways to 48 takeaways, and that was 48 giveaways. Okay. So he is able to get the puck. I mean, you saw that ridiculous goal against Vancouver in those reverse retros. Wow, that was just beautiful, and just the casual deke and just bar down. It was unbelievable. He's got such a prowess and IQ, and despite losing 15 pounds, he's not crushing guys in the boards, but he is a big boy, and he will just lean on guys in order to create separation and to transition the other way. And I love that that's what I'm seeing from him. And yeah, I think like he's surpassed so many players this year. I don't want to go like too hot or too strong, but like he's seriously in contention for top 5 player this year.
I think so.
And I think in other years people were saying that, but I definitely had some reluctance because of other aspects of these games. And the more that we've had the chance to have a microscope on him because of the Canadian division, because of seeing him in so many matchups, the more you try and look for flaws, the harder it's becoming this year. And that is really cool to me. So I have lots of positive things to think about him.
Yeah. I think that for a while he's been in maybe the top 5, top 10 most dangerous players. Yeah. But as his game is rounding out, I think he's entering that conversation for players overall as well. Like just what they bring, across the board. So Leafs fans are, really getting to see something pretty special, I think. And he's one of the reasons why I would say if someone's going to go all out, in spending, they'd be a good candidate for that. But you do need to just find out, maybe a whole sort of, or you have an injury or something happens where it's like, we need this spot more. I think time will be the only thing that can give us more insight into what that would be.
Right.
Yep.
I thought you were going to come at me with some hot critiques of Matthews' game.
Well, no, I just think that with the amount that he puts the puck on net, he just can't keep up the 20% shooting. I just think that's impossible. And that's not an insult. That's not knocking him. It's just like, how many players can do that? And I know he's special, but I just don't think that can happen statistically. It's just too unlikely, I think. And like I said before, what happens to the Leafs if you knock off a quarter of Matthews' goals this season just because of statistical averages? I think that they'd still be in first in the division, but I just think that if there was an issue or a gap or a hole, it'd be more likely to be exposed by now. But I guess one other thing, if I'm thinking of why they might add, it would be looking at ice time that their big 4 are playing.
True.
And more ice time means more points. It means more opportunity to help your team. It means you're receiving a lot more hits. It means you're giving a lot more hits, which wears a body down.
Yes.
It means that there's a lot more time. Like, Austin Matthews is kind of injury prone.
He's had a hard time getting full seasons.
That's not a knock. It's just a reality. So...
And they've played some obscene, defensive, numbers, right? Defensemen, numbers on
for sure.
Time on ice.
Exactly. Yeah, and, Marner's a little guy. He's not that little, but he's not exactly built like a potential... What's it called? An Iron Man candidate when you never miss a game?
Right, yeah.
He's not built like those guys. So
right.
If you can add someone to your top 6 who... you can trust in more situations and can help in more situations, and by domino effect make your third line stronger because you're pushing a guy like Mikheyev down, make your fourth line stronger. You can give them more minutes. I just think it would bode well because when you get to the playoffs, guys are going to be banged up already. So I just think that that would be a smart move for them. If nothing else happens, that's why I think forward is where they should add, just to spread that ice time around in a more sustainable way.
I love Garland. I think the temperature in Toronto might make that a tough sell, that he might have to wait several weeks to be able to insert himself into the lineup, considering who or what could go the other way in order to acquire him. And so I think there's been a lot of noise, and maybe that means there's a bit of credence to the rumors of Sam Bennett becoming a Leaf. And so... he's showcased really well in the top line as he's requested for a trade. And so that showcase, he's playing with better players. And like we were just talking about, if the Leafs need someone to play in that top six who can succeed by playing with better players, I think Sam Bennett can do that.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit, I'm not saying his archetype is at all like Wayne Simmons or like Hyman, but like he's got like a little bit of that element where there's some physicality in his game that exists. And I mentioned this about other players before, and I don't think Sam Bennett is gonna take you to a whole nother level for the Leafs in the regular season. Right. But as I've said about other players, I think he's not a team that'll get you to the postseason, but he can be of a lot of value in the postseason.
For sure.
If you see the difference there. And so already with guys like they've garnered with Bogosian and Simmons and Thornton, ways that they've also changed the dynamic of the room and the dynamic of the bench, and just how it, as you had mentioned before, it's fun for the Leafs to play hockey right now. I think adding Bennett, he doesn't have to quarantine, he can just go straight over and play. And I think for the temperature that Toronto fans are at right now, which is not good or bad, but like things are going really, really well. And so you'd want something that can
jump in right away.
I think in Toronto they wouldn't be able to wait. And so I see there being a candidacy for Bennett. Do I love it? No. I think if Bennett did go to Buffalo, say in a Calgary trade, check that clip out that we talked about earlier, then I think Toronto would be a little bit like they missed out, or they might want to try and get a 3-way trade and just tell Buffalo, hey, don't let this guy cross the border.
Right,
We'll like pay out for him because we would like something, we like it right now. I think that's maybe a bit of the temperature.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on that.
Cool.
Ottawa, you got something pretty interesting. I've got mine's pretty weak. So let's not start weak. Let's go strong. Sure. What do you got for Ottawa?
I think. Okay, I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to reveal my source, and I know this sounds cringy, but I have a scoop, and it's a good one, that there are teams right now that would surprise fans because they're playing well, they're in playoff contention, that are going to sell because of money. I don't think that we're done seeing the Ryan Murray trades where a team like the ownership is like, you know what, we're bleeding too much. I'm sorry. I know we've got a good thing going. You need to shed X amount of salary. More of those are coming. And so it's Valentine's Day. We're matchmaking. I'm not saying I don't have a match for Ottawa. I'm just saying they need to get real promiscuous. They need to get on trade Tinder, put themselves out there and say, if you're selling, we're buying. I think that they have an opportunity to get a Ryan Murray, a guy who can be a part of their unprecedented success, who would normally not be available and would normally not be available at this price. They're looking for rebounds. They're trying to just capitalize on the situation. And if there's a name for them who would be just like, you almost don't even want to think about it, but Jack Eichel.
What?
Jack Eichel.
What?
Because, listen, he's unhappy in Buffalo. Taylor Hall, I think there's a good chance he goes. And if you're Eichel and you're in Buffalo and you were so excited, you picked up Taylor Hall like this strong offseason, you have Eric Stahl in there, and now your ownership is selling.
Right.
He's a arrogant. He's a cocky guy. Like Eichel is.
He's got an alpha personality. You got to be in this league, right?
Yeah.
And his comes through strongly, I think, in the way that he addresses media or the way that he's candid about his team. Very alpha.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think he's a guy who's just going to hit a breaking point and say, trade me, I'm done.
Yeah.
And if that happens, Ottawa, just put it all, like, say, here's our cupboards. You can't have Stutzla. You can't have Shabbat. I do not care what it takes. Get Jack Eichel.
Wow.
And I think that of the teams out there who would have cap space and who have the assets expendable to make it happen, and who would be interested timeline-wise, and who have a spot in their roster, especially if you're losing a guy like Norris in the trade, if you'd be like looking at a Stutzla Eichel center tandem down the road.
That'd be amazing.
I think if there's a match to be made that's just like shoot your shot and just do whatever it takes, I think Eichel would be a ridiculous Ottawa Senator.
Man, my brain is melted. You may or may not know that I'm a diehard Sens fan, and so I can't even process this, and like I can't even come up with I'm not gonna have my own hypothetical trades and talk about who I think or value, but like. Okay. But okay.
Just listen. Your second line is Tkachuk, Eichel, Dadonov. Okay, no, that's your first line. Yeah. But just think about that, and then you have like Stutzla on the second line with just you'll have like he would have so much more space to develop. He'd have like his pick of like the young forwards who are left to pair with, and find some chemistry.
There are some good players.
Okay, and now listen to your power play. Eichel, Shabbat, Stutzla, Dadonov, Tkachuk.
Wow. That would definitely be unparalleled vibes.
Yeah,
that would be good.
Crazy.
That'd be good.
That'd be crazy. And so, like, if you're talking about what the return looks like, it's gonna be okay. So they have a lot of young guys, like 19 to 22.
Yeah.
Who would you say are the guys that like Norris is probably at the top of that list, right?
Yeah, I would say Norris is first or second. I'd say Batherson's a little bit ahead of him.
Yeah.
If you don't know Drake Batherson, hopefully you'll get to know him a lot more this season. Looks well, but yeah, Norris is. Last I checked, he was leading the team in scoring, which is good, especially in a team that hasn't, I guess, scored that much. Maybe it doesn't say too much, but I really like him. I think he's a fixture on this team. I don't think he's going to go the other way in a trade.
So, I hear you, but Jack Eichel.
That's true.
Who are their top defensive prospects? There's a guy who they drafted 2 or 3 years ago, like 19th overall.
There's
what's his name?
Lassie Thompson might be who you're thinking of. Jacob Bernard Docker possibly. Yeah. I'm wondering how much. There's a lot of guys in the University of North Dakota right now are playing for Ottawa. There's 4 of them, in fact. So. I wonder from a chemistry perspective if there's maybe some hesitancy to trade some guys who are there. But Bernard was the first round pick. Sanderson was 5th overall. I don't think he goes the other way. I think you try and pawn off Lassie Thompson. I love Braunstrom, by the way. He's looked really, really good.
Yeah.
If that was a necessary sacrifice for this is Jack Eichel. Not right now, but eventually I could probably get over it.
I think you'd probably need to give up one of Sanderson or Norris.
Right.
And then your number 2 asset is going to be, if your number 1 asset is the forward, your number 2 is going to be defenseman and vice versa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then you're probably looking at a first and a second or third, and you're looking at maybe Stepan goes the other way. Like, this is going to be a hefty package, but I think that Ottawa can sacrifice the assets to get it done and be better off for it afterwards.
Yeah, very interesting what that would also do for a room, because that could be a huge boost in some sense, like where Tkachuk, right, he's American guy, and same with Eichel, just playing with maybe one of the better American players. But that being said, if a guy like Norris goes the other way, Norris and Tkachuk are roommates right now, and they were on the top line together at the World Juniors. So there's like a lot of love, and DJ Smith might be not quite forcing that to work, but like that's kind of what it's a combination that he knows he has chemistry in the past, and considering the depth of this team in NHL ready prospects, I think he's going to keep Norris and Tkachuk a little bit together. So that might be tough to swallow. But
So
I think
then
a guy
maybe you
like
look at
Eichel can help.
Right.
He'd be one of the few guys who could help get over. Like, there's clearly a bromance there, I think, between Tkachuk and Norris. So,
well, then maybe you look at this is fun to say, Sanderson, Batherson, as being the top two assets. A first, which is from Ottawa, is very valuable. Let's be honest.
Extremely.
If it was this year's first, that might be enough.
Yeah.
Maybe you add something to send cap, but you might have to get compensated, because the value of those three assets would be so high.
Yeah.
Man, that'd be pretty.
Wow, that is.
I know you weren't expecting that. I intentionally didn't spoil that for you beforehand.
Oh, that is mind-numbing. that just makes all my takes just seem so lame, and I didn't really have that many. I was just gonna say this is the first time after a 3-year streak of trying to ship Jesse Puljujarvi to the Sens that I'm not going to say it because
time to let it go.
Time to let it go. It looks so perfect for so long, and it just hasn't happened. And he's clearly not worth just a second or two anymore. Well, maybe not clearly, but he's worth more to the Oilers on the team than away from the team, I would say. So I don't see that happening. And really, I was just going to talk about where would Derek Stepan go, and I don't really know if I feel like doing that very much anymore. But yeah, I mean, like, this guy's from Arizona. Yeah. He had a baby. Who his wife and his child live in the States, and so there might be some reasons for that. If you would want to do right by the guy, I think the LA Kings might be the best way to go. I saw some other suitors, like maybe Florida and Nashville, and maybe New Jersey might be guys who are interested. But
he feels very Nashville. Yeah, just the guys who it's like, man, if you could have seen this team in 2016, you'd be like, oh, they're going to be good.
Yeah. So I think those are all possibilities, but LA is the closest to Arizona, Glendale, where his family is likely situated. He played there for 3 years, right? And so, I mean, other players or other teams that have cap or would be interested. I don't think the Rangers are going to come back. I don't think he'd want to go back to the Rangers since they dealt him. Columbus, I mean, could be in it, but both of them and Boston have enough cap space where I don't think if they actually have cap space that they're going to go out and spend it on Stepan. And so maybe that's a bit of a insult or a disservice. He's an NHL player, but he's struggled a bit. And so I see LA being a fit, but you got me thinking like crazy now. Okay, you might have to clip this back to the Oilers.
Yeah.
All right, there have been rumors out there, and we've neglected to bring them up on this pod, but I was kind of eviscerating the Oilers earlier because I didn't think that they had enough defensive IQ or just, compete in the defensive zone. And there's been rumors that this player has been available, and this would wow the dynamic of the team. Leon Draisaitl would go to the wing and play with.
I thought you said go to the wings.
Oh no! He would go play on the wing, and his new center would be Alexander Barkov. Could you? He's got 2 years remaining. Exact same, I think, situation where Florida's like, okay, what are we doing? Where are we going? We cannot lose this guy for nothing. I think he is a bit loyal, but there are a lot of people pressuring the GM of Florida right now, being like, what are you doing with this player? We can give you so much now. And there is a slight air of uncertainty that he might not re-sign. Now, I think it could be very possible that he stays. Florida's looked good this year. They've got Bobrovsky. They've been willing to spend, even though they said that they're cutting money. I think that that Florida would benefit from having patience, but in a fiscally strapped world with the flat cap and everything else going on, they might just go like, what could we get from the Edmonton Oilers? Could Philip Broberg, as much as you like to say he's untouchable, this is Alexander Barkov. Yeah, like. He could very well be a piece to make it go the other way. That's not enough. You need Broberg. You need Holloway. Oh yeah, no. I'm just saying that would be that you have to get used to that being a reality. This would be like your cupboards. Yeah, exactly. You just say like, okay, McDavid and Draisaitl. Here's what we're doing, and just like we said with Dubois being able to polish off the defensive needs for the Jets,
Yeah.
go back and check that clip
Yeah.
out.
You double down on like the top heavy roster, but you just add some defensive prowess to it.
Yeah.
Oof, that's
Yeah,
wild.
so if you're watching this in the Ottawa clip, go back, check the Edmonton clip out, and see the evolution. See this brain blast happen in real time. Or if you're also checking out the Edmonton clip, go ahead to Ottawa and some other clips. We've got some really, really spicy meatballs there in the Ottawa takes. You are going to love it. So, man.
This has truly been the Jimmy Neutron Brain Blast podcast.
The Brain Blast podcast.
Yeah.
Rebrand.
No.
Okay, last but not least.
Okay.
Or are you ready?
The temperature.
You need some more time.
The temperature will not drop because
okay.
it's time for Montreal. And it's Valentine's Day. It's a day to be a hopeless romantic. There's a young man out there who had very strong feelings in his teenage years. He had posters on his wall. He had dreams. Didn't even want to think about what if we could connect, make it work. I'm talking about Sidney Crosby,
The kid.
the Montreal Canadian.
Wow.
So here's the timeline, okay? A bunch of you are going to be like reporting for disinformation the second that came out of my mouth. But listen to me. Last summer, everyone on the hockey subreddit, on Twitter, on YouTube was saying, here's the place Taylor Hall's going to go and here's why. And we had our big brains and we were deep in the mind of this player. And you know where he goes? Buffalo.
Yeah. Like
Buffalo. So all of you
more wrong.
Right. All of you out there saying Sidney Crosby's never going to, you have no idea. Wayne Gretzky got traded. Sidney Crosby is facing a reality where Brian Burke is in charge of his future.
Brian Burke, who famously has said on Sportsnet and been berated for saying that this team is not in its window, gets hired as the president of hockey ops for Pittsburgh. And
say, if you had to put your future in someone's hands in the world of hockey, how low on your list would Brian Burke be? I'm not trying to disrespect his backstory, his knowledge, but someone to make the calls right now, he's not near the top of my list. That's a debatable point, but what is not debatable is the fact that Pittsburgh has a very flawed roster. I'm sure Sid is frustrated already at how the last few years have gone in the playoffs. Evgeny Malkin is expiring. They tried really hard to get Marc-Andre Fleury back, and they could not. What are the bright spots on this roster other than Sid, Gino, Gensel? Like, you've got some young, fairly promising defensemen, but I'm just saying it's Valentine's Day. Let's dream a little bit here. It is, if you're going to say that it is, you can't make a case for why Sid would request a trade, then that's just, you're being unreasonable if you're saying that there's no case to be made.
Right.
There's a case to be made, and it's very strong.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's going to happen, or I'm not even saying it's likely, but I'm saying there's a strong case to be made for Sid wanting to leave. And if he wants to leave, that organization is going to do right by him. Their priority is going to be, let's reset, but also, this guy matters to us. He matters to our fan base. Let's put him somewhere he wants to go. And he had Montreal posters on his wall growing up. There's pictures of him in Habs jerseys as a kid.
And yeah, he played for Rimouski in Quebec in the Q. So yeah, there's certainly more and more that we can dig for.
And let me explain why
I'm bullish. Go on,
Yeah.
go on. But I might have a rebuttal after.
Okay, I'll explain why why Sid would be interested from a hockey perspective. So first of all, the Habs have a bunch of cap space coming up. I think this is an off-season move, by the way. I don't think this is a mid-season move.
Oh, okay.
I think this is after what's going to happen, which is the Penguins have a couple signs of life in the off-season and just stumble and fall in some way at the end of the season. It's going to be an embarrassing playoff loss or something like that. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
I would you could pick a household plant in this living room and I'll eat it if the Penguins have a positive playoff run. And clip this because I'm confident in it. But Montreal, watching them right now, sometimes, this is not my quote. It's from a guy, I think it was a TVA reporter, and I apologize for not having the name offhand. But sometimes they play Corsi, not hockey. And one of the reasons for that is, look, I'm a big believer in Kotkaniemi, but he is not able to assert his will on the game yet.
Right.
Suzuki is a kid, and he can't do it alone, but he's been one of the few bright spots on offense. Danault is just plain bad in the offensive zone. That guy is probably kicking himself for not taking his big payday because the only reason he produces offensively is just volume of chances. His actual offensive toolkit is straight up bad. And so Montreal right now hasn't been able to consistently produce offense through the middle of the ice. And that's where, if you can't do that, you can't produce offensively consistently.
Yeah.
And if you can add Sidney Crosby's dynamic, like he's good on the forecheck, he's good in the cycle, he's good on the rush, he's good everywhere. Like it's Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
If there was a team, if I was to pick one team out there who, no matter who you have to give up in return, adding Sidney Crosby, who can A, fit him cap-wise, but B, become an instant contender from adding him to the lineup, no matter who you have to give away, it's Sidney. It's the Habs. If you add him to that team with the depth, incredible depth they have on forwards, defense, their size, their speed, the goaltending, there's no other team out there who is who adding Crosby, as good as he is, would just instantly launch them into the stratosphere as far as cup contenders go. So if he wants to win another cup, I'd argue that Montreal could make a case for being the most appealing place to try and win one more. Because Bergevin has said he wants to win while Weber and Price are around and doing well. Like, the whole organization, he fits with the timeline, he fits with the plan. They have young assets that you could give up for a Crosby. They have cap flexibility with contracts coming off this offseason. I'm not saying it's likely, but if we're dreaming, you can make a case, and I think it's fun to make a case. So that's my spice.
I think they need to make that happen before the expansion draft, which can be something to look forward to, our discussion about that down the road. But yeah, you don't want to lose some of your assets, right? Or you don't want the chance of making or breaking a trade by losing someone to Seattle who ended up being a key piece in maybe who Pittsburgh valued. So
for sure.
So there is definitely a case for that. I mean, it's got to be tough. So yeah, I don't want to like speak out of both sides of my mouth. Like, it feels like I've maybe done a couple times on this podcast, but like I've talked before about like how long can the players in Chicago restand, like a retool, really a rebuild. I've been skeptical, but a guy like LeBrun has brought up a really interesting point. And maybe I'm speaking in generalities, but Crosby for sure has this air of, I think, loyalty and dedication to him. I think it comes on and off the ice. There's a lot of stories about Sid off the ice that are just like actually amazing, that he's done for others and other groups of people. And someone who kind of like parallels that air on Chicago is Taves, where he has a lot of like dedication and loyalty. And yes, he's dealing with injury and issues like that. I can't speak to that. I don't know, when they were describing some Taves issues. He's kind of sounded like he got Lyme disease. He's a native of Manitoba. It's pretty prominent here. That's what I thought, but we'll see.
How many times have you had Lyme's disease?
Twice for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cam spends a lot of time in the bush, and you get Lyme's disease from deer ticks. So, and I know Taves, doesn't he like hunt or fish? Like, right. He owns farmland near where we live. Actually, like he's an outdoorsy man.
Yeah. So I don't know. That was kind of like my take on it. But anyways, like going back to Pittsburgh, like Crosby's got a really loyal. Now, if there's a scorched earth rebuild, that would be kind of ironic, because how can you have a scorched earth rebuild without giving up Crosby? But like if all his buddies Letang and Malkin are gone, it might be this. Do I really want to stay around? But like a guy like Lemieux played on an awful Pittsburgh team, and then they drafted Crosby, and I feel like there's a pattern or succession there where maybe Crosby plays with the next Crosby in a couple of years from now, right? Lemieux traded off to Crosby.
Who will be from Latvia.
Yes.
Call back, go watch that video.
Yes. So
I have something to say about that, though.
They could get rewarded in the long term for Crosby being dedicated to the franchise. And I'm a little suspicious. And here's, okay, I'll let you jump in first, because I'm going to go back to my
couple things.
My point.
Penguins don't get Crosby without the lockout.
Fair.
You can't count on that happening again.
Fair.
Crosby knows this because he was the guy drafted in the,
Yeah.
Number two, if that lockout doesn't happen, this is fairly well documented. Lemieux was a part owner of the Penguins while he was playing for them.
Yeah.
He was this close, and it probably would have happened if not for the lockout, to putting the Penguins in escrow and accepting a deal to the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh, interesting.
It was this close. And
here come the Canadiens again.
Exactly. Yeah. You're right. There's pattern, and it was so close last time, and there's no lockout this time to bail out the Penguins. So it's yeah. Like it's almost like the fulfillment of what the Habs missed out on of Lemieux. It's so poetic, and it's
interesting.
Yes.
Well, okay. Well, I'm going to go back to stifling maybe some of these dreams, because a lot of the players that I think we have seen leave teams who have been so loyal to their teams are players who have not won with their teams.
Yeah.
Going really far back, a guy like Alfredson.
Iginla.
Yeah. Mike Modano, was he after the Stars Cup?
I think he might have won.
Yeah, let's go with Iginla, Alfredson, Joe Pavelski recently, who's still put up Thornton, right? These guys haven't won, and so and consider this. This was a point LeBron made as well, is that the 2022 Olympics are coming up. If Crosby won gold for Canada, does that totally placate like his need or quench to win? You could argue no, but that could be a huge X factor in actually, like, there could be a real benefit to him going, and Canada looks really good, and there's a case to be made for other teams, but if they won gold, like, does that completely soothe his need to maybe win again at the couple or at the NHL level?
Right.
And you can say no, and I think that's fair, but I think that can go a long way. That can have a resonating effect for several years for Sidney Crosby if the Team Canada won gold.
So hear me out, okay? I'm going on, forgive me for being on my phone, I'm going on a limb here, so I'm just kind of researching something. So Sidney Crosby won the Conn Smythe Trophy for both of their back-to-back cups. But there's an interesting part of the narrative where, guess who won it in 2009 for their first cup? It wasn't Crosby.
And it wasn't Fleury.
No.
Was it Gino?
It was Gino. So I don't know if any of our fan base crosses over to the NBA, but Kevin Durant is a guy who has asterisks beside his titles. Title? He just has the one, right?
So.
He has two?
Yeah.
It's disgusting. I'm not saying Crosby has asterisks, but Brian Burke is on record saying that teams are trying to build their teams around the Pittsburgh model. Brian Burke is on record saying there is no Pittsburgh model. They got lucky. They got Malkin and Crosby. I'm not saying there's asterisks beside Crosby's cup rings, but how many players do you think in this generation are going to be able to make a case for being among the top few of all time? Ovechkin for sure for goal scoring, not as a player. Connor McDavid, depending on how his career goes, cups, whatever, stays healthy, maybe. Crosby has a case for being up there among the greatest of all time.
Right.
But his cups were with Malkin. And for one of them, Malkin kind of stole the Conn Smythe.
Right.
What would it do for his legacy? Again, an NBA comparable. People were hesitant to give LeBron. There's still, obviously it's debatable. Is he the greatest of all time? A lot of people say Jordan is the greatest of all time. That's not something I'm trying to get into. But a lot of people said if LeBron can go to a lot of this narrative of him being in the discussion for greatest of all time only happened because he didn't just win rings with Miami. He won a ring in Cleveland, and he went to LA.
That's just something.
How much does it add to a player's narrative and their case for being among the greatest of all time if they can leave this franchise where LeBron played on a super team, Crosby has Malkin? What would it do for his narrative if you can go to the team with arguably the most frenetic fan base, who would just fight and die for anyone in their narrative? If he could bring a cup to Montreal,
right,
people are going to be talking about him as being like maybe the second or third greatest player of all time. That won't happen anywhere else.
Right.
And so maybe he doesn't have the hunger for just another cup, but maybe he gets up for that.
It's a legacy play.
Mm-hmm.
Not all legacy plays would necessarily work out. So I don't know what it means if he goes to Montreal and he doesn't win. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But yes, obviously that's something that we can discuss, and you can say this could really add. I don't know. Like this whole Crosby has only done it with Malkin. Well,
that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, I don't think there's asterisks. I'm not saying he did it because of Malkin. I'm not saying that he doesn't win cups if Malkin isn't there. I'm just saying for one of them, Malkin won the Conn Smythe.
Right.
And there's this understanding that it's always been Crosby and Malkin.
Yeah. People might fleece me for this analogy, but I mean, Gretzky won 4 in Edmonton with Messier, with Curry, with Kevin Lowe, who just made the Hall of Fame, right? With Grant Fuhr.
Do you mean Coffee or?
Coffee too. Lowe made the Hall of Fame.
Who's Curry?
Yari Curry.
Oh, I was still in NBA mode. I thought you mixed up Coffee and Curry.
Oh, no,
right.
no.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so when Gretzky left, Edmonton won. You're following with Messier. Messier also went and won in New York, and Vancouver fans don't want me to talk about Messier at all. I don't think Messier is in the argument for the greatest of all time, even though Gretzky left. But what I'm saying is that I think over time that I don't think that narrative will stand the test of time. And now it's a social media age. It's different than Edmonton. There are other factors in this Edmonton example, but Gretzky left and never won. Messier stayed and won, and he left and won somewhere else. But yet we're not tarring and feathering Gretzky for being the best of all time. His numbers are bananas.
Exactly. That's the thing, though. Crosby doesn't Gretzky has the numbers. If he never won a cup, people probably still think he's the greatest of all time because his numbers. He has more assists than second place has points. Right. That's insane. I think in this comparable, I think that Malkin is Messier, where if Malkin goes somewhere and wins another cup, he's probably not going to be in the conversation for.
Right.
He's not going to be up there. Crosby, the way that he gets higher in this list, because he's playing in a different era than other guys in terms of putting up points, where he's just not going to be able to touch their numbers.
Right.
Like the early part of his career was basically still the dead puck era. Like Brodeur and the Devils were still good, I think, in 2005. Crosby is the only way he continues to ascend this ladder of greatest of all time is by winning more cups.
I guess, but then you have to ask yourself, how many players is he ascending on that ladder? And will that move the needle enough?
Right.
Is another question, because we're talking Gretzky, Lemieux, right, are going to be up there. You could argue Bobby Orr,
Gordie Howe.
Gordie Howe can be up there. So, like, from a legacy standpoint, where is he among those? And is 1 or 2 cups even going to be enough? Yet to have the conversation. While you research, here's one thing that I find interesting. You said you didn't have very much confidence in Berkey, and that's okay. I respect that take. I think one thing that Brian Burke maybe doesn't get enough credit for is that his Toronto team that he made was actually not bad. It was really the Sagan trade that cost him, and that'll bring up some tough memories for Leafs fans. But this was also in an era where we didn't have conditional trades, right? We didn't have conditional first-round picks like we've seen with Ottawa, being able to retain for a year and taking Tkachuk and then deferring their pick, right? That didn't happen in Brian Burke's era with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So what happens if he does not get fired and that team that he got fired from in Toronto ended up making the playoffs that year? What happens if that was a conditional pick and they had Sagan and Kessel, right? Like, we could be changing the conversation, and we've gone really far into what if territory. So that's what's worth bringing up. The other thing I would add on top of that, we've talked about Berkey a lot, but Hextall is actually the GM, and Hextall has made, like, the evidence of Philadelphia right now, that is actually Hextall's team and design. And he essentially got fired because he wouldn't bring up Carter Hart too early. He decided that, I know Philadelphia needs goaltending. I am not willing to pay the prices for goaltenders that are not worth as much as they're being advertised on the market, and I'm not willing to hurt Carter Hart's development by bringing him up. And that ultimately cost him his job. But that team now, what they've been able to do in the way that he's been able to retool with Giroux and Voracek, with a lot of players. I know we didn't talk about Konechny rumors that came up. I think we'll let those go by for the sake of today's podcast. But, like, Hextall has done a lot, putting his fingerprints, really good free agent signings and acquisitions with Jimmy Hayes, who's been really proving doubters wrong. James Van Riemsdyk is one of the top scorers in the league, which maybe some people scoff at, but this guy was a second overall pick, right? Like, they've done a lot, if with good drafting, development, and acquisitions. And if you consider that Burke analogy from Toronto, the Hextall analogy from Philadelphia, and you look at Pittsburgh, no, they don't have the same amount of runway, but I think there's a very reasonable case to say that these two are absolutely the right people to hire for the job. If you are going to choose to go down a runway where you are keeping Crosby and Malkin, they're the guys to have. If you're choosing that the runway is not long enough and you need to grab different assets and you need to overhaul your identity, and I think these are still both the correct people to hire in either way. So that's my rebuttal to maybe some of things that you've been saying. I
think I completely agree. They're the guys to hire for a retool. I think that they're the guys to hire if you sell Malkin and Letang but keep Crosby.
Right.
But I don't think, like, those teams are great, but they never won anything. And I'm sure, like, obviously if we can go back, they have Sagan, they have Kessel, who knows. But I would say that they don't have the runway. You don't have time to draft and develop people unless you're getting, like, early picks in the first round. And next year is Malkin's last year. I don't think there's any way Malkin stays on that team unless something crazy happens. And I don't think these are the GMs to like if you have a year or a year and a half, these are the guys who I want doing the job if I have 3 or 4 years, which maybe Crosby sticks around by then, but he has concussion issues. Who is he at the end of those? I'm not wishing anything like that on him, but so I hear what you're saying, and you're totally right. I should have given Burke more credit, but if I'm Crosby and it's like, okay, realistically, they have a year and a half to make something happen. I'm not sure that anyone can, with the assets that Pittsburgh has right now,
or doesn't
to
have.
trade. Exactly. I don't know that there's a way that they become competitive in that time frame. And so if Malkin's gone, I'm not saying I expect it. I'm just saying there's a case to be made for him saying, you know what? Let's move on. And so you asked about greatest of all time. Lemieux won 2 cups as a player. I think that if Crosby goes to Montreal or somewhere else that has a big fan base, if he can go to like an Original 6 team, I think if he wins one more cup, he is now, the conversation is him or Lemieux. I think he passes Bobby Orr. I think he passes Gordie Howe. And if he can win 2 cups, I think it's Gretzky and then it's Crosby. Obviously, we can go back and say what happens if Lemieux is healthier.
Bobby Orr is healthier.
Right, exactly. Then this conversation isn't happening the same way. But
Gordie Howe.
That's the only reason really he's up there in my opinion.
Well, let's not offend anyone, but yeah.
I still think he's up there. He's just not up there if he doesn't have the longevity factor, like in terms of being in the top 5 of all time.
Yeah.
But I think that Crosby has a real shot at being the greatest player of the modern era and being the number 2 of all time if he can go put together a win or 2.
So, well, here's another thing that maybe quashes your dreams a little bit. But if Malkin only has a year left and he's more likely to be dealt, how do you feel if Malkin is the one who's a Canadien instead of Crosby? It doesn't have the same romantic effect, but is that not more realistic? And you were just describing all the assets that the Canadiens can give up to a team that would hold value, aka convince Crosby that maybe you can stay. What happens if Malkin is the one who is your number 1 center instead of Crosby? I think now other people can argue that the plausibility of Crosby going to Montreal is higher than the plausibility of Malkin going to Montreal, but I don't think so. I think it's a lot more likely that Bergevin is like, I'm not gonna wait and play games to see if Crosby's available. If Malkin's available, I'm going to get him, provided I'm allowed to talk to his agent and like we can lock him up, make something happen, right?
So here's my thought. Bergevin is good friends with Lemieux. They played together on the Penguins. If Crosby gets moved, it's not by fielding the market. It's through something like a situation where Bergevin calls Mario and they're like, I'm not trying to be pushy. I'm not trying to offend. I just need to ask out of respect for Sid. Is there any way? I think that's the sort of thing that leads to a Crosby trade. I think Malkin kind of goes on the trade market. And this is no longer relevant to the Canadian division. But if Malkin's available, Colorado.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah. I love it.
That's just the thought I had.
That would be good.
Because I think they're in a place where Montreal could only give up those assets if they're getting a guy who they know they have for more than a year.
Yeah.
Colorado, it's not quite the same.
Right.
So this has gotten wild.
I didn't even talk about your boy Anthony Mantha being scratched. Healthy scratch the other night. But
I told our friend to pick him up for his fantasy.
I think it was a one-off. It's just communication.
This has been... we're working at keeping it shorter. Obviously, we have not succeeded, but I hope you enjoyed. If you... I'm going to cut this out because I didn't have anything else to add to that train of thought, but I'm going to restart the close. Do you have anything you want to say before we close?
Knock that like button loose.
Oh, yeah. So, Yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thanks a lot for checking us out. We've got lots of clips and some kind of one-off videos of our channel. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and we'll hopefully see you again soon. Thanks.